Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and this is my review of Jupiter's Legacy Season 1. Just finished that yesterday, and it's good. It's really good. So anyway, I read I don't remember if I read it in the miniseries form, or maybe I read it when it was collected in trade paperback like 8 years ago, and I kind of loved it. In fact, I would mention it, infrequently as probably the last truly excellent superhero story. But it held this weird position where it was like partially memory hold. And so then Mark Millar got a Netflix deal. And even before it was announced, I said, I can tell, even though Jupiter's Legacy isn't his most famous thing, I can tell that he cares about it probably the most. So it was announced as, the first major project. And then it was just like years. And it was just so slow. So you're like, what's going on? So by the time they announced it, there was tons of other superhero streaming shows, so it just kind of went like, that's fine, whatever. But then as it got closer to being released, like, I kept thinking about it, which is weird because the previews and the trailers, they were just okay. Nothing that amazing. The main thing I noticed was the superhero costumes. They had these weird, like, corners on them, like beveled edges. And it reminded me of Kurt Russell in Sky High. I was like, that doesn't look good. It doesn't look good in some of the publicity photos, but in movement, it looks fantastic. Basically, what they're doing is they're pushing the shape of the muscle groups so that when things blur in movement, that what I'm trying to say is, like, the pec goes out a little bit and then you get the rib cage. But if it's not exaggerated, when things move, it just all blends into one, bean-shaped blob. But if you accentuate the shapes, then when they move, it looks more, like a superhero. So the interesting thing is, even though I bought the trade paperback, and I remember buying it when I was very, very poor, it was a major purchase. It was like $20. I read it a million times, but I haven't read it in a while. So watching the trailers, I was like, I don't remember any of this. It feels like they're doing a lot of new things, and they absolutely are. The other thing is that I didn't reread the original miniseries, but I skimmed it, and I remembered that it was weird. Frank Quitely does clean line style, so a lot of his drawing is just empty space in between lines. And it's almost like that was the writing style as well. Like, there would be some really intense pages, and then it would just get really slow. And then it would be like, 5 years later in Australia, you're like, what? You don't want to have anything in between that. So the other thing is that, people would always say, you just like it because of the art. And they did these other miniseries in that same franchise, and it wasn't Frank Quitely. And I think I flipped through like the first episode. I was like, no, it needs to be Frank Quitely, or it's not Jupiter's Legacy. But then I watched it. And I said, wow, these wigs are terrible. No, I said, okay, so I sensed something, and what I sensed was correct. This is actually going to be really, really good. The weird thing is, and that's why it says what's wrong with, is this thing almost like is getting memory hold as it's coming out. Now, Netflix famously does not release its, viewership numbers. Mark Millar says that, for the first week it was the number one in like every territory, but Mark Millar is known for being a very enthusiastic self-publicist. So if it was like 1 minute each day, it was the most popular show, he's going to say, you know what I'm saying. So I didn't go like, oh, wow, I'm going to take that 100% true. I just go, okay, cool. Mark Millar really likes his show. I'm sure it's doing well. And I always kind of test if something's doing well if my normie friends mention it. If your normie friends mention Invincible, it's popular. If, your comic book friends, that doesn't mean anything. So Jupiter's Legacy is a generational story. There's an original group of heroes from the, I guess it would be probably about 1930 or so. You had the stock market crash of 1929. By the way, I actually learned about that. I never knew. I just thought the stock market just crashed. I didn't realize that the years before were basically like the last few years where the stock market was doing amazing. I thought things were just kind of good, and then they crashed. I didn't realize there was a giant spike up. I think they said like things were growing 20% year upon year before the crash. And then they even explained how the crash worked. You know, they started extending credit and allowing like regular people to buy massive purchases on margin. And then, of course, when the margin call came, they couldn't pay for it and everything collapsed. So I was like, wow, you guys explained that in like 3 sentences and it was totally understandable. So it's set with the stock market collapse, and you have Utopian, Sheldon, Josh Duhamel. By the way, when did he become such a good actor? All I knew him from was 2 things. Well, I guess 3 things. He was the special forces guy in the Transformers movies, and he was always good, but his character wasn't, very deep. He got in a fight with Tommy Lee over Tommy Lee taking too long in the bathroom, like 15 years ago. Like every time he is ever mentioned, that's what I think about. He used to be married to Fergie, and he was on some show for old people in Vegas or Las Vegas that was on forever. I never really said, oh, that guy, he's a great actor. Wow. The thing is, he's like 48, and I kept thinking, like, if he was this good 10 years ago, he potentially could have been into that, like Brad Pitt, where it's like, the super handsome guy who's also a really good actor and is getting better and better each year. So, I mean, maybe his roles weren't very challenging back in the day, but this is a challenging role, and he knocks it out of the park, which is a problem. Because the casting directors did not cast everyone, or maybe they didn't expect him to be this good of an actor. So almost everybody in the cast, except for his brother Walter and I forget the other guy's name, Sky Fox, everyone else kind of pales in comparison acting-wise to Josh Duhamel. I can't believe I'm saying that. The guy who plays his brother Walter is fantastic. And they do, a lot of different ages for people. So they kind of cast people in middle-aged, and then they're going to play younger and older. The old age makeup and the wigs are not very good. I did notice by the later episodes, they were learning how to light it, so it didn't look awful. In the first few episodes, it looks hideously bad. But by the last one, they were, hey, let's not do the 4K brightly lit focus where you can almost smell like the glue sticking the fake beard to his face. So it's a story about a rich guy. That's another topic I want to talk about. When is the last time you've seen a show where rich people are not automatically presented as evil? Furthermore, that they're presented as being human just like anyone else. They can hurt, they can have mental problems, they can be heartbroken. I'm not used to rich people being treated as humans consistently. Several rich characters. So that was interesting, and it caught my attention. So his father kills himself. He has these visions that lead him to, all over the country, that ultimately lead him to this mysterious island. He has this cohort that was kind of destined to be with him, and they're the first group of superheroes. That being said, from the first miniseries, that is literally like 5 or 6 pages. They took 5 or 6 pages and they made half the season out of it. And I freaking loved that, because as someone who read it, I kept feeling like I was taking crazy pills. Going back to the Wikipedia, it's like, no, that wasn't in there. No, this is all new. But it's good. It's good material, and it works with everything. Getting back to Josh Duhamel, the problem is that most of the younger actors, they're not good actors. They're pretty terrible. Josh Duhamel seems to be like a legitimate character in a legitimate TV show. And the younger actors and actresses, first of all, are not very good. And they totally seem like generic, like CW superhero characters, where everything's like over the dramatic and everyone's always like almost crying. And that might be, to show like the callowness of this second generation. Although I feel like it should be like a 4th generation. Like your parents were in their 30s in the 1920s, and you're 30 and it's 2021. Like something doesn't match here. You could just say that they grow up really slowly, so these characters are actually 60, but they look like they're 30 because of the superpowers, whatever. But specifically the acting of Sheldon, Utopian, and his brother, and then this other guy who later is going to become Sky Fox. Again, the guy who becomes Sky Fox is like an evil rich guy. They spend so much time showing you his humanity, showing you his kindness, his empathy. So I'm not automatically like, oh, Sky Fox is like Utopian's like, he's a traitor. And I'm sitting there saying, I'm guessing he probably has his own reasons for doing this. Because you saw, like, they do a lot of, Sheldon having a nervous breakdown, losing his mind. And at one point he's like, hey, I really need you to, I forget that guy's name, George something? I need you to go with me on this vision quest, essentially. And he's like, if I asked you for the same thing, would you go along with it? And you could tell even Sheldon in his addled state is kind of like, no, it's crazy. But his friend is like, Sky Fox is like, you're my friend. You need this. I'm going to go on this insane vision quest with you. So I'm not used to white, straight, male, rich people being treated like anything but monsters in any TV show or movie from the last, 5 to 10 years. So it's like, they're all people. Now let's move to a problem. Is that this movie, or this season, it has several black characters that could be completely removed and it would be essentially the same show. There's another problem with these characters. Number one, most of them are soulful saints. This is a trend in movies, TV, comics, to portray every black person. Every black person talks like this. Like, everything's very serious and soulful. It's like nobody just, wants to come out of a bathroom spraying, don't go in there for 45 minutes. Like, everyone is a saint. The other thing is that their personality is, number one, something racism. Like, you got to mention racism like every other scene. But also, like, they have this one guy who, I forget his superhero name, but he becomes like the genius guy and he's paralyzed. He's got these scars. He's working at a plant. So when there's a big riot, he's protecting Josh Duhamel. But then when Josh Duhamel goes to his house, he's Mr. like strident, Black Lives Matter Antifa. Hey, fuck you, get the hell out of here. And it's like, you were protecting him in the factory. And then at one point they're on a ship and it's a mixed crew, all different races. And he basically is telling these people how to fix a part on their ship. To which this one guy who's white, he's like, get the hell out of here. You've been on the ship for 2 freaking days. Go away. And then he's like, when he leaves, the black guy's talking to this, I think he's from India, or maybe Egyptian. I know those are very far apart. And he's like, oh yeah, it's just because of the color of my skin. Except for, it's already been established that the captain of the ship is black. The captain of the ship is black. This guy the white guy is working for a black captain, and then since all the writers can do with the black character is have him be a saint or do something about racism, like, it's weird. So his daughter's, I guess, supposed to be a major character. She's not a good actress at all. She's very pretty. She's not a good actress. So every time she came into a scene, you're like, ooh. Same thing with Chloe and Utopian's son, Paragon. They're just not. They're not good actors and actresses. So the whole younger generation it just doesn't work. I'm hoping that they see what works and what doesn't, and in second season they're like, okay, so it needs to be all about the older characters because that's the only people who can act. And every time there was a Chloe scene, you're just like, ooh. Now, getting back to, the minority characters kind of being mainly soulful saints. That's mainly the black characters. There's a mixed character. I forget his name. Sky Fox's son. Now he's in the comic, and so I knew this character fairly well. So I did roll my eyes when they race bent him, especially when it was. He was just kind of like a Gordon Goodbrother for the first few scenes. He was like this criminal, but he was like a nice one. And then there is a scene, it's like an issue or episode 3 or 4, where I'm not going to spoil it, but all of a sudden you go, oh shit, do not mess with this guy. So it was nice, and I think this guy's mixed many different races. I'm also not used to seeing minority characters have an edge to surprise you in any way. So that character, Sky Fox's son, I absolutely love. There's a weird thing where there's a Black Star and he gets cloned and they're doing an autopsy, and they stretch like a third of the season on this autopsy. But you realize very quickly, like, this is not going to be a full, complete story. It's season 1. It's a short season. It's 8 episodes. Oh, another thing I love. If I'm not mistaken, the final episode was 35 minutes. I spoke for years about how I hate Marvel Netflix. The season would always be too long. Every episode would be almost an hour when it really did not have an hour's worth of material. It seems like with this show, they're like, the length of the episode was how much was the story. And if it was, some of them were, I think, 50 minutes, but the finale was 35, and it felt very, rich, and there was a lot there. So I love that they don't feel entitled to all of my time, or, contractually they're set, oh, you got to deliver 55 minutes every episode, even if you got to pad it with, remember in Daredevil season 1 where Karen was like bidding on office furniture for like a 10-minute scene? What the hell? So you don't get any of that type of stuff. So I will say, the writing is uneven. The acting is very uneven. And even in the middle of the season, it kind of dipped where I'm like, oh, geez. It really, at the end, it really, rises to the occasion, to which I'm very much looking forward to season 2. This is excellent. I know people are saying watch Invincible, but I read Invincible, and from what I've seen, they really didn't change anything except for some race and gender swaps. So I've read it, and this one, they're like, even if you read all the comics, you're not going to be able to guess the next scene. So I thought this was, it's not, in sports terms, it's not a grand slam, but very satisfying, entertaining. And man, Josh Duhamel has got to be kicking himself for wasting 10 years on Las Vegas or whatever the hell that shit, Transformers movies. He should have been doing like art movies in his 30s like Brad Pitt was. Very, very good. Very good actor. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.